Jimmy Trzaskowski has a home run title for us for the last segment. When people are looking to get to that next level, we got 30, 40 minutes ready to go. We need to finish strong. Turning people analytics into boardroom gold. I'm into gold. And so, Jimmy, if you could make your way up, we're going to go ahead and get started. But I want to say, before he brings us home, the energy throughout the last 2 days has been really, really cool, and I've really been excited to interact with all the different folks and listen to the presentations and learn. And I think this is going to be one that's going to take us right with some great momentum as we go home. So, Jimmy, why don't you bring us home?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good man. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, congratulations to those who are still here. Good job. Good job committing and not just saying you're just going to a conference to, take a look at the city. I'm here today to talk to you about some fancy words up there. So strategic alchemy, turning people analytics into boardroom gold. So you might have heard me speak earlier. Central thesis of what I'm going to talk about, I'll get into a little bit more, but it's really selling people analytics to stakeholders, how you start it, some tips and tricks to how you can get in there, and how I truly believe that people analytics can turn a company into a billion-dollar company. I'll give you some examples, and I'll show you based off some of my experience. So as we go through a quick little agenda here, it's probably more of like a masterclass thing that I'd like to teach, but there's going to go through as much as we can in the time that we have allotted. So we're going to talk about the purpose of the talk, a little bit more about my philosophy and what I just generally do for organizations and how I position myself, a little bit more about my story, because I think it's relevant for anybody who's trying to get into it, who's working with a lot of different cool companies, tech companies, enterprise, startup, doesn't matter, how you can implement people analytics as the core foundation for that unit. And then we're going to look at unlocking business success with the power of people analytics. This is where that $1 billion comes into play. Some of the lessons learned and mistakes that I've made, right? Nobody's perfect, so don't do those things. Boardroom gold, how you're going to navigate through some of these important meetings, whether you're brought into it, whether you run them, just like how you get the value from those. And then the final part, it's more the principles of boardroom mastery. It's like how you're going to sell it, how you get more funding, like how you can communicate that this is the absolute be-all and end-all for the business, right? And I truly do believe it is. So purpose of this talk. So one thing I want you all to walk away with when you look at this, you'll see in the green, we are business optimizers who create economic value. We are not pencil-pushing administrators. Okay? I don't know what happened with that administrators part there. That's not how I had it there. But make sure you embed that in your brain. It's super important part, right? I want all of you to be equipped with the strategies, mindset, and maybe some key takeaways for tools that you could take back to your businesses, as I go through the presentation. The key part is making it resonate, right, with whoever you're communicating with, leaders, managers, so on and so forth, okay? So again, we are business optimizers. We are not, what? Thank you. It sounds like there's still some pencil pushers here, though. Let's, don't mind my presentation style. I'm a bit cavalier sometimes with it, so if you hear some language, it is what it is. But I've heard it time and time again, whether it's directly or indirectly, or a cost center, we don't provide that much value. You have, an engineer come by, it's like, what do you guys actually do? Well, I think the core root cause of that is because classical HR has been a procurement function and like an administrative function, right? It's built to be a servant, structured in a classical way as an input to production, whereas new age people departments, and the way that I look at it, should be a value added line to the business, where the leadership is valued partner with significant lines of business that create that economic value, okay? So it's really, really important that leaders in these departments should be proficient with people-centric design thinking. And what I mean by that is essentially bringing innovative solutions to life by understanding how employees think, feel, behave, right? Classical HR does not really follow this path, right? And it's very much dedicated to reactive procurement and administrative mindset, like I talked about, right? In order to be relevant and competitive in this day and age, in leading organizations, these teams, like all the teams that we're a part of, you have to adapt. So there's still a need for classical HR operations. I'm not shitting on that at all, right? It's a little bit smaller scales, right? Than we might, than the old age, companies might be used to. But today's competitive landscape really requires the modernization of different skill set to drive these results. And one major foundation is basically what we've all been talking about. It's an analytical and an insights-driven mindset and skill set, okay? So a little bit more about like my philosophy and what I actually do, right? I'm not really a title person. I'll take on whatever role makes sense as long as we can build the business, right? I build organizations from a people perspective. I build billion-dollar organizations. That's my whole point here, right? That's what I want to do, right? I use highly effective leadership principles and data-driven strategies, right? And people-centric design thinking. Try and remember that. Look up that term a little bit more if you want to, right? To solve some of these complex people problems, right? I believe that our customers are basically employees, and our work is a product, okay? And in order, to create economic value for the business, you have to maximize and optimize your product. This is your work, right? So this philosophy has kind of been my foundation for my professional life and how I've been successful of it, because it's insights-driven, it's an analytical mindset, and I know that one of the most important pieces of a business are its people, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So this has to do a bit more with my story. Some of you may have heard it earlier on. I wanted to start as an engineer because I grew up across Detroit in a city called Windsor in Canada. Recession happened, didn't want to do that. Thought I might be an ethical hacker because I got into computer science and business, working for the National Department of Defense. Ended up doing consulting for Jane's Bake Shop, so that didn't happen at all. Ended up turning over a new leaf and saying, okay, I really like the people side of things. And looking at some of the companies that I always admired, the most successful one, like whether it's Google, Toyota, Ford, I'm using whatever examples, right? Facebook, you can think of a lot of different tech companies too. All of them had a similar recipe or variable in common, and it was they had the best people, and they had the highest engaged people. So I said, I think I can impact that, and I think I can bring a unique lens to that field through people analytics. And this was a long time ago, right? It was like 16, 17 years ago, right? When it wasn't really a term as much. So how can you quantify some of these metrics, tell a business case, show people that if you increase motivation, increase engagement, get people to love what they do, hire the right type of people, use the right philosophy behind that, you're going to have the best company, right? I've had the opportunity to work for a lot of great startups, larger organizations, whether it's consulting in executive fashion. And like I mentioned, because I've always led with people analytics, I truly believe it. To this day and age, I have $2.6 billion in mergers and acquisitions behind my belt with the teams, right? Obviously, it's not myself. I'm not going to give myself that much credit. But going into the next segment here, it's like, what's the actual power of people analytics? You're probably saying, hey, Jimmy, that's like a serious statement. People analytics is what made you guys $1 billion? Absolutely, right? So if we go to the next slide here, I want you to look at EX. Anybody know what EX is? Shout it out. It's becoming more of a common term. Perfect. See, you all know it. I don't need to even talk to you about it. But what people analytics does, it drives insights to maximize EX. Okay? That's super important to remember. Now, when you look at businesses in 3 different segments, you have EX, you have CX, you have BX. So employee experience, customer experience, and business experience. What this chart basically means is employee experience is greater than customer experience is greater than business experience. You maximize EX, everything else falls into place, right? EX affects key business outcomes, and it is a critical factor in organizational performance. We all know that. Like investment in EX is also directly correlated to improvements in the balance sheet. We know that. It has a comprehensive view of the employee's journey, right? From discovering job description, hiring, onboarding, development, departure from the organization. It includes everything workers do, hear, see, learn, and more as they navigate their careers, right? So as people analytics professionals, if I'm looking at one variable, there's a lot of variables, but for the purpose of this talk and how you pitch it to leadership and make sure they understand and put investment in it, EX is a big driving factor of it. Now, when we look at the actual impact of it, this is where that billion comes into play. Okay, so when people say, you're full of shit, I say, I'm not full of shit. Take a look at some of these statistics here, right? And you can take a look at $1 million company, 100 million, a billion, doesn't matter. But when you add these percentages to that, it adds up quite a bit. So when you're communicating to your leadership team, senior leadership, you're a guest in a boardroom, whatever it is, these are staggering statistics here, right? Your productivity improves, your absenteeism improves, so on and so forth. Now, the key metric here is that you need to understand that hopefully everybody knows what ENPS is, okay? What I found over all these companies that I've worked with and consulted for is if you get into a range of ENPS between 80 to 100, you're seeing those types of numbers, okay? So this is why it's like very, very important to have that engagement amongst the workforces and make sure everybody's trained up and working to the same mission, right? A big one for board members, especially, as you can see, that 3.5x earnings per share, right? That's a huge one. So if a board member is like, well, what do I care about this, right? It's not talking about the bottom line here. It's like, yeah, you want to maximize revenue for your shareholders, you want to continue going as a business, you need to maximize EX, simply put, right? Just another piece of data here, since we're all a bit of data nerds, I thought I'd include a bit of it, more of it. Like work units in that top quartile, again, talking about ENPS of 80 and above, see staggering results, and they outperform the bottom quartile units, right? So if you think of competitors, it's like, who are competitors in your space? Are you the most engaged workforce? Great, you're gonna be outperforming them in these metrics, right? And 3 big ones for board, senior leaders, all that. I mean, all of them are important, but they're gonna go right to customer productivity and profitability, right? And 22% more profitable. Well, that's a significant difference, right? Significant. There's obviously things with like patient safety, quality defects, shrinkage, so on and so forth. All important, absolutely. They all impact that, they're all variables that impact that greater like EX and the business, but these are some very, very important pieces of the impact there. So when I look at some of the lessons that I've learned over time, and whether it's from like early on in my career to even as much as like 6 months ago, right? It's a few of these right here. Don't do these things. I don't know why they're all labeled number 1, but let's pretend that's supposed to be like that. They're all number 1, right? They're all number 1. I promise you, I didn't have that. I know my numbers. First one, vanity metrics. Data without business impact. I reported to a CFO early on in my career, and we built something that was really good for like our team, right? Kind of made us look cool, right? And I get in there and, earmuffs for anybody who doesn't like language. He literally goes, Jimmy, I don't give a fuck about your vanity metrics. And I said, okay, that like shocked me. And like my whole body felt like a tingle. I was like, connect it to the business, go back to the drawing board. So I did that. Vanity metrics, get that out of your head, okay? Whether it's bad or good, like bad metrics are still fine. You're communicating a challenge. Now, how are you gonna solve that, problem? Analysis paralysis, I mentioned it earlier. We all know that one person. Let's look into the numbers for 18 hours and then not come up with any sort of decision. Don't be one of those people, right? Make sure that, I'll put it this way, I'd rather do a great job and finish something than be a perfectionist and never finish it and just keep going. Okay, avoid that pitfall. Not connecting to business goals. This is a bit different than business impact. Business goal is like, okay, we have to capture 20% market share, right? How are we gonna do that? Well, if some of you have OKRs in your models, it's a bit easier to do. If you don't, talk to your leaders and say, okay, like what's the mission? If they don't know what the mission is, then that's a bad thing. I need to talk to the business owners a bit more. But again, you gotta connect it to the business goal. How's it gonna trickle down to you guys, and how can you actually impact that, right? The fourth number one there is long and excessive reporting, okay? Nobody likes to read 40-page reports. Not going to happen. Definitely not a leader. Nobody really likes to read that long of reports. Do not, do those things. We'll get into like the nitty-gritty of this a little bit more. The fifth number one, lack of qualitative context. I think people forget about this too when they kind of finally get the imagery down, and they make it nice and aesthetic, and there's good points, and then they just bring it to someone who still doesn't quite like, what am I looking at? What's the purpose of this? Add a couple lines of qualitative context to really put it in perspective for everybody. The other number one, poor data visualization, right? Kind of connects to analysis paralysis, a couple of the other ones, but you need to be able to tell a story. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? It's a long age example there for a long time. Ignoring the audience, right? You have to know who you're speaking to. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in a minute. And not anticipating pushback. You will get pushback every time you're in any one of these types of meetings, even if you're perfect. Okay, so this kind of goes to boardroom gold and the 5 C's. So I've been a part of a lot of executive meetings, leadership meetings, whether I was invited to them or I was owning them. Doesn't matter. I think the count is like over 420 of them. It's an insane amount. These 5 C's will help you kind of navigate very simply those conversations, right? And to provide something material to them, okay? It's not necessarily the principles and the examples I'm going to give you. That's going to come in the next section. But first one is context. Be clear with what is happening and why that matters, right? We were talking earlier like about the qualitative context or like bad metrics. It's still got to report on them. You still got to paint a picture of what's happening and then why it's important. And if this is going to impact your bottom line or it's going to impact turnover, so on and so forth, they have to know, and they have to know why it matters. You're going to use data and other pieces, to connect that story. Clarity, keep the messaging clear, right? Visuals, executive summaries. A lot of speakers have already talked about that. We're going to get into a little bit nitty-gritty of, a couple of quick, simple rules to make sure that you're very clear with that. But they want to understand that when you're in those types of meetings, any type of board meeting, any type of executive meeting. It's applicable to just general meetings, right? If you want to add some use to it. This clicker. There we go. Confidence. You have to know your subject matter, right? And anticipate those questions. Like, study it. Right, if you don't know what it is, hopefully at this, like, you'd probably know because you're close to it, you're tied to it. But sometimes you're not. If you own a bigger team, like my last company, I owned a big team. Right, it was over 40 people. They're giving me a lot of different stuff. I still have to understand what it is. Right, make sense of it, and then connect it to some of the business goals, and make sure you anticipate those questions that will probably come up. Connection. Right, align your analysis and all your material to, again, those business priorities. Right? If you're in that conversation and everybody's talking about market share, everybody's talking about customer service and how they need to improve that metric, and then you go ahead and talk about something completely unrelated, it's just like over everybody's head. Nobody's going to care. You're adding no value in that meeting. And then the most important one, call to action. If you forgot all the other 4, just remember this one. Right? Call to action. Got to be clear on the decisions that need to be made. So I'll give you an example. A couple companies ago, I went in, it was the first executive meeting. A lot of executives, like 20 of us in there, and they're just talking a lot of nonsense, realistically. There's no decision being made, there's no path forward. It was, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Week 2, same thing happens. 3rd week, I just put up my hand and said, hey, everyone, I just want to be clear. The cost of this meeting per hour is $16,800. We've completely wasted all this damn money. If you guys want to give it to me, great. Like, give it to me. I'll make more use of it. But we've literally not made one decision. We have not talked about anything material, right? What's our decision? Let's build something out, at least to have that dialogue, okay? So all those are key, very simple, right? Common sense. You probably all knew them, right? Just make sure you reiterate that and think about it going in. Sometimes we get lazy on another meeting. Make sure you come out with action. If you can't come out with action, don't have that meeting. It's pointless. Which brings us to the principles for boardroom mastery, okay? So a little bit more examples. So first one, lead with business impact. Again, not with data, okay? Whether you're selling the people analytics practice, trying to get more budget for more employees, talking about the use of it and putting more investment, putting more understanding and time, it's very important to lead with the business impact, right? And what I mean by that, again, frame data around profitability, risk, efficiency, or strategy, right? Those 4 things will kind of get the attention of the people who you're speaking with in those rooms that are the decision makers. An example of that is instead of saying, hey, employee turnover is 18%, it's like, great, Jimmy, we don't give an F about your vanity metrics. It's, hey, turnover is in revenue generating roles increased 5%, costing an estimated $3 million in lost productivity. Okay, what? I didn't know that. How are we gonna solve that? What can we do? And this is where you, again, call to action. That's where that comes into, right? Next principle here, keep it concise and actionable. Senior leadership has limited time. Don't be a source that wastes it. Be a source that saves it, right? Skip the excessive details, provide the summary with key takeaways. My favorite example is the 3-slide rule, okay? Issue, the data, and the action plan. Okay, because the number 1 addresses the why it matters, right? Goes back to Simon Sinek's principle of like sales, like start with the why, right? Good book if anybody wants to pick it up. Slide 2, the data. This is where your actual metrics come into play. Okay, turnover and charts and blah, blah, blah. We have all there. It talks about key insights, trends, risks, all that's that important. And then the action plan, that last part. It's like, what are the next steps? Don't come to me with a problem, come to me with what you're highlighting plus the solution. That's what's important. Number 3, use storytelling and data visualization. Okay, I think every single person has talked about this, but it's very, very important. Numbers don't drive decisions, stories do, right? You present the data, present trends with clear, simple visuals. Again, we talked about it a million times. And the narrative. The narrative is important. Right? Instead of the complex spreadsheets, analysis paralysis, all that jazz, use a trend chart with one takeaway headline that captures the attention of the room, right? Whatever it is that you're pitching, right? Don't say our hiring cycle is 42 days with fluctuations across regions, because then my CFO is going to pop over your shoulder and be like, Jimmy, we don't care about the vanity metrics, right? It's going to be our hiring delays in sales cost $1.2 million in lost revenue last quarter. Reduce time to hire by 10 days, and we're going to recapture 500,000. You want to do that? Yes, I want to do that. Who doesn't? Great. I need another recruiter. Okay, right? The cost of that recruiter, against that number, you're still making a lot of money, right? You're saving it. You're adding economic value, what we've been talking about, right? We're not pencil pushers. We add economic value. Anticipate questions and objections, okay? Board members, executive leaders will grill you and turn you crispy every single time you enter that room, right? You have to be prepared. You have to anticipate what they're going to be asking, okay? Again, what does it mean? Expect these types of questions. Don't even worry about the question necessarily, worry about the blue in writing, right? Why is this happening? What's the financial impact? What are we, doing about it? It's root cause. Root cause analysis is super important. I'm going to get into the example in a minute. The business case, and then the solution for accountability. So if you're reporting on retention issues, be ready with benchmark comparisons, cost implications, mitigation strategies. So 2 companies ago, working for an engineering consulting firm, I was heading up all of HR, employment brand, recruiting, et cetera, we were looking into our detractors for ENPS, and there's a decent amount, and it kept pointing towards compensation being the issue, like they're paying detractors. I'm like, we're paying a lot of money. Like, this can't be it, right? So we ran a simple regression analysis. This is where sometimes like diving a bit deeper and understanding what's the root cause, what's happening is better. So sometimes you got to take a step back, reanalyze. And what we saw that it was actually a lack of remote work, right? People didn't want to drive downtown Toronto because waste 2 hours of your life each day, adds up to 10 hours a week, and do the math, and it's a lot of days, right? So that was a big impact. So we had something to go off of, and that was the primary concern. So as we started to move to a bit more hybrid and flexible, and then we saw, you know what, we're paying a lot for this office. Nobody needs to be here. They're on a client meetings, they're on the computer. Get rid of the office, save a lot of money, reinvest it into employees. Align with business priorities and strategy. Again, we talked about this a few times. Tie reporting and commentary to company goals, growth and risk mitigation. This is why it's important if you don't have OKRs, try and get your company into OKRs, right, as objectives and key results, just because it organizes everybody into this like trickle down communication funnel, which is good because you can work backwards from what those goals are and everybody's aligned, expectations are set, that's all important. So if you're presenting HR metrics, again, you can frame it something like employee engagement is down and our top 5 performers are leaving at double the average rate. If this continues, we risk losing 10 million in intellectual capital and productivity. It doesn't always have to be necessarily dollars. It'll probably lead to dollars, but it doesn't. I'll give you an example. So my last company, The Score, those of you who are not familiar, it was Canada's largest sports media product. They got into sports betting. They got acquired by Penn Entertainment in 2021 for $2.1 billion. Then we merged with a couple of US entities. We built out Barstool Sportsbook, dumped them, and built out ESPN Bet, which is obviously a massive company. Now to get there was a lot of very complex technical migrations. Right? A lot of people are like, oh, it's like a sports app and betting. It's like, what's so complex? Well, you're dealing with millions and millions of customers. You're dealing with all their data, their licenses, their information. You get hacked, you're screwed, your company's gone, right? So another way we framed it, right, there's a bit of pushback on compensation, how much we were hiring, is like, are all these engineers necessary? I said, look, you want to compete with FanDuel and DraftKings, which are the 2 biggest names. You probably, anybody who watches maybe even a bit of TV will see an ad from one of them. They're the giants. Oh, almost tripped on that bad boy. We needed to compete there, so we needed our product to be just as good. What's going to take us there? The engineers to build it. So put the investment in there, you're going to lose your $2.1 billion investment. So easy sell. Make recommendations, decision ready. Very, very important. And with clear recommendations and required decisions before you leave the meeting every time. Doesn't matter what type of meeting it is, with colleagues, with boards. But like if you go to an executive meeting and you don't follow this principle, or you're invited to one to present something, you can get chewed up and then they'll be like, that person didn't add value. Like, bring me someone else who will, right? So instead of turnover, again, has increased 11%. We recommend a targeted retention plan for top talent. It's going to cost $250,000. It's going to save $1.5 million in replacement costs, and your approval is needed, Mr. or Mrs. CFO. Okay? Very easy way to pitch that. And then the last one, this one sometimes makes or breaks. Actually, you know, I'm going to go back one second because there's a good example about this one. So I worked for a fintech company out of New York. I was consulting for them very early in my career. I just like whipped up this amazing dashboard and all these metrics. I'm like, oh, this is amazing, right? This was still like fresh out of university with, you know, computer science background. Like, I'm going to show everybody in there. Go in there, gave an amazing presentation, knocked their socks off. And then I'm like, at the end of it, I'm like, well, thank you. And then everybody's just like awkward silence. And then what's next, right? What are we going to do about it? What are the recommendations? We're able to recover with that, but again, not doing that and leaving people in the dark, it doesn't look good. And going back again to the last one. This one, I would say, could be like 80% of the reason why you can expand your team, why you can get funding, right? I talked about earlier, I brought on a girl who was one of the best salespeople that I knew onto the people analytics team, and it was primarily for presentation of metrics and could connect the dots very well. And you need to understand who you're speaking to. Is it CEO, is it CFO, is it a board, right? They care about risk, they care about costs, they care about strategy. While board members, you know, they'll focus on governance, long-term value, external risks, so on and so forth. But you got to tailor your message. So example, CEO, we need to increase workforce agility to support market expansion. It's obviously more complex than that, but that's the general theme, right, of how you're approaching them. CFO, it's like you got to approach them with the metrics in a different way. It could be the exact same metrics that you have, but you're presenting it in a different way. A 2% increase in engagement, and we saw the data before, correlates to 5 million revenue boost. You have my attention, right? Let's pump some more money into it if we need to, or let's focus on this one particular area, or let's work cross-functionally to solve this problem. The board one, right? Regulatory risk from non-compliance could lead to fines and reputational damage, and the past few companies that I've worked with have been a compliance nightmare, just in general, and that is always a sticking factor, right? So all these types of things are very important when you're connecting that message. And the way I'm going to close it off, again, is there's a lot that goes into this. I'm giving you very, very high-level points. Hopefully you can take away some of it. But the key focus is people analytics can literally make or break a company because of the insights it drives. I'll give a military example. I don't know if there's anybody with military experience, but I compare people analytics to the intelligence branch of the military, right? If you don't have the right type of intelligence, you're going to make wrong decisions. You're going to lose the battles. You're going to cause damage, so on and so forth, right? We are the same, but for the company, and the impact is the same as well. You can make or break it. You saw those metrics, and I've seen it time and time again, scaled a lot of those companies, and the commonality is they really believe in the EX. It's our job to sell it, right? And how we're going to structure this, right? How we're going to push it forward. Right? What are we going to use, the tools, the this or that? But when you're starting off, sometimes it's difficult to do that. So you need to be able to pitch it appropriately. Start with a couple quick wins. Get on the board and then show them, okay, this is how you can really add economic value by investing in people analytics. We can start this way and then scale it as it grows. And you can build a Google, right? All those types of companies are based off of that foundation. We all know about their cultures, how passionate they are about all that type of stuff. But I will leave you with that because I'm at time. I don't know if there's 1 or 2 minutes so we can do questions, but happy to answer anything.
Thank you, sir. We're going to cut them.